Well, here's the oops moment we've been waiting for. They went into Mike Johnson's district. You know, the Speaker of the House, you know, the guy who's pretty much terrorizing his own constituents. Well, they went and interviewed a few of his own constituents, and they came out with some interesting stories. You know, folks, these people voted their prejudices. These people voted what they thought would be only afflicting the other people. But I'm going to tell you something about these people and how the media is portraying it after we listen to the folks in his district. This is important, and the characterization of this is important. Yes, Republicans intend to cut your Medicaid. They intend to cut your Medicare. They intend to cut your Social Security. They intend to cut your SNAP. And you know what? Many of their constituencies will snap. Listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
With only 2 days to avert a government shutdown, a huge unanswered question remains. How much influence will voters have on how Congress proceeds, both on that continuing resolution and ultimately on the budget? Because look what we saw in Speaker Mike Johnson's rural Louisiana district. A massive line outside the food pantry, and his constituents aren't happy with Washington.
Are you aware that they are considering cutting back Medicaid in Congress right now?
I am very much aware, and my children are on Medicaid. So yes, I do. I do fear that very much. The kids here, they rely on that, and we're poverty here.
To help us. Give me one for that. People are hurting out here.
They lost their jobs, lost their homes, lost their cars, lost everything basically, and then this is what they depend on to eat.
You may be from Louisiana, but you're the House Speaker. Cross the aisles, do whatever you got to do.
Melanie, although Republicans often deny it, economists say cuts to programs like Medicaid and food stamps are the only way to make the budget work. So again, you're in Speaker Johnson's district, which he won, by the way, with 85% of the vote. What else did his constituents tell you?
Well, there is a lot of fear here in this community about potential cuts to both Medicaid and SNAP. It is a small rural town. A lot of people told me they are struggling right now to pay for groceries, pay for eggs, pay for diapers. They're struggling to find jobs. And so a lot of the residents here have come to rely on government assistance. Also relying on the food bank that we visited yesterday that passes out baskets of free food every week to members of the community. Now, Speaker Mike Johnson has said repeatedly that they're not going to cut Medicaid benefits and that they're only looking to reform the program, including instituting things like work requirements for able-bodied adults on the Medicaid program. But even those types of changes could have devastating impacts for the community here. I talked to Pastor Don Snyder of Christian Life Church. He's one of the founders of the food bank. He runs it every week. And he said the issue is that in a community like Vinton, there are just not a lot of job opportunities and that people don't have cars and don't have public transportation to be able to travel to seek employment elsewhere. I talked to another woman, Summer Stinson, who's from the area as well, a mom of four. She said her boyfriend does have a job, but he has had his hours cut back. So he might not qualify if they institute certain types of work requirements. So just a lot of concern here, and the residents here in Vinton, VA, on their mind weighing heavily these prospects of potential Medicaid and SNAP cuts.
Some great reporting there, Melanie. Thank you. Joel, do you think these kinds of reactions make it less and less likely there will be cuts to Medicare and Medicaid? Or, I don't know, no matter what, is this an issue Democrats can use to their advantage? How do you see this playing out politically?
Well, Chris, I think it should make it less likely. And, that story that Melanie was reporting on from Speaker Johnson's district, I know, in previous appearances here with you, I've talked about other Republicans like Tom Cullen, Oklahoma. Well, guess what he did? He made a call to the Trump White House and over to Doge to make sure that they pulled back on some of those cuts that were impacting that community. But not every American has a bat phone to power. Not every American has an opportunity to call the most powerful people in the world to go and get the the programs and get the services they need brought back to them. And so I think what you're seeing is a growing fissure, not among Republicans, but among Republican constituents who don't like what they're being delivered in Washington. This is not what they signed up for. When many of these folks voted for Donald Trump, when they voted for folks like Mike Johnson, they did not vote for gutting critical services that they rely upon. They didn't vote on the other things that Trump is focusing on, which I think is why you're seeing in some recent polling and some other recent opinion research that Donald Trump is really struggling with his ratings on the economy. And I think those numbers are only going to continue to crater if Trump, Elon Musk, Mike Johnson, and Republicans continue to target working families like they have been.
Now, here's the deal, folks. I remember when President Clinton, back in the 90s, decided he was going to have welfare reform. And let's be clear, welfare reform really had a connotation. It had a color attached to it. It had a group of folks attached to it. Because even as what made me so upset when President Clinton signed that welfare reform bill is he had two overweight women of color next to him, and putting in people's minds that is what welfare looked like. But also what they did is the way they implemented this welfare reform wasn't a constructive way to pull people out of poverty, but it was always just punitive without any sense of giving folks the ability to move forward, and which would be the same thing that they would be doing now. But there's one thing that always happened to give a better face to welfare reform. Whenever it comes down to writing the laws, the face of welfare changes. If you take a look at this, what we just showed, everyone they showed in this district, they showed our white brothers and sisters, because they understand that in order for people to look at welfare and say, let's be less punitive than we otherwise would be, that is the face they have to show. It is sad, but it's the same thing that I saw back in the 90s. Most people on welfare are white. Most people dependent on the government are white. Even the corporations, SpaceX, and Tesla, all these guys that are sucking on the tits of the government are basically white companies. Yet the impression that everybody wants to give is that somehow welfare is something for the other. Only when it is about to be taken away do they give a semblance of reality to welfare. What we've always said, folks, is that prejudice and racism affects mostly those who are effectuating prejudice and racism. Because now, if we had not had an election that was based on prejudice, because remember, when the policies of Kamala Harris was placed against the policies of Donald Trump without putting a name onto it and polling was done, people wanted the policies that Kamala Harris was putting out there. But as soon as we attach the person to the policies, suddenly things change. Not dramatically. Well, let's back up. It changed dramatically, but the voting, again, was still close. What I'm trying to say here, folks, is the following. What Republicans are doing will affect the people in rural areas. It will affect a lot of our white brothers and sisters more than anybody else. Look, people of color are used to having a hard time. They're used to having it hard, a hard life. They're used to all these things. So a little bit more pain is modus operandi. But for a lot of what's happening right now with the news, what I call the new antiseptic slavery, things that a particular group in our society were never used to. But because we continue to move our capital upward, our monies upward, eventually you run out of people to rob from. You run out of people, and then you are now the prey. We have to be in this together. The race thing is a stupid concept, a social concept that is used to keep us apart and then have them take it all from us. We have to wise up. Appalachia, the ghettos, the barrios, the urbs, the suburbs, the exurbs, the rural areas. We have got to wise up, because all these isms are used to keep us apart so that they can do exactly what they're doing, folks. Get it in your heads. We are in the same boat, and it's the boat that the plutocracy has thrown us in with partitions. So if we really want to save this country, if you really want to save a good lifestyle for those good people that you see out there who made that mistake of allowing their prejudice to elect a thug, then we've got to work together. Then we have got to do this together. You have got to call your Congress people. You've got to be out there in your congressperson's district. You have got to be in the streets when it's called upon. You have got to do what you've got to do, because it's on you. Democrats, the leadership, the establishment ain't coming to save you. They are spineless. The establishment is spineless. They should be out there shouting and teaching and shouting and let people know what's going on. And that's not what we're hearing. It's on you. It's on the activists. It's on the people. It's on the individual.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.